For the real final touches to the project, outside of the actual movements, I think we've got a really good controller setup here. Just a few other things that we can do to make the very simple level that we have look that little bit better. One thing I've done off screen in between recording is I have set the light system to be a static light, and I've built the lighting. That was just a requirement because my engine was really struggling to run anything in Unreal Engine 5 at runtime. And that does give us a slightly more kind of clean look when we're in game, and we can see hopefully that the FPS is staying a little bit higher. I'm just going to hide that. We don't really want that to be displayed. So that would be the first thing. We have a built light system, so I've already built the lighting, and this is the final result. I think on top of this, if we wanted to add a little bit extra, we could come to the create option, and in Unreal Engine 4, that will be in the options on the left-hand side. You can search for the post-process volume if you can't find it. In Unreal Engine 5, it's going to be just here, the visual effects, post-process volume, and we'll just drop this in. This will be the same in both versions. You may have a few extra options here, I'm not 100% sure. But what we can do is we first want to scroll down and make sure that this affects the entire map by finding the infinite extent unbound. So this will affect everything, not just where your camera is. We can put this anywhere, maybe off to the side so it's not in the way. That will, like I've said, affect the entire map. So we can start adding some effects now. Now, the general ones that you'll see, maybe a little bit of bloom, people tend to find make the map look a little bit nicer. We can really blow this out though, so you don't want to go too high on the bloom. But again, this just kind of shows that this is affecting everything regardless of where we are. Another popular one is a little bit of chromatic aberration. So this will add those different colors kind of going around the outside of different objects. I'm not a huge fan of that one. So we're just going to turn this one off. We can also look down to things like our image effects. Now, another nice one, just adding a vignette around the outside. So this is like a encroachment of dark color from the outer ring to the inner, and we can come in and see what this starts looking like when we throw these together. So this can go quite well with bloom. You can get a little bit of bloom in the middle of the screen and then kill that around the outside so it's not too overpowering with some vignette around the outside. So that is one option we have here. I think the intensity seems to have been reset on mine. And the vignette, you probably don't want to take up the whole screen like that. But again, it just adds some extra noise and detail to the camera. This is what kind of makes the game feel as though it's had a proper kind of artistic pass. And I'm definitely not going to do this any justice. Generally, adding extra noise to your game can make it look more realistic. You don't get like perfectly clean, unfiltered camera shots or just general views of the world. So adding things like grain jitter, increasing the size of the grain. Again, you don't want this to be too noisy, but this can be an effect if you wanted to. But just adding subtle effects that people might not quite see that are there, but when you look around, you can see that it's not perfectly pristine because, again, nothing is. And adding a little bit of noise like this for a post-process volume can just really kind of wrap up your project and make it feel as good as possible. You can play around with depth of field, a little bit harder to get working, so anything above double digits or below double digits, you get really big extremes, so it can be quite hard to work with. Again, ignore these, this is my GPU. So I think around about 50, you can see some fairly decent effects, and this is one of those where you might want to come in, press simulate, in fact, press play in the normal viewport mode, press F8, so you depossess your character, come down to the post-processing volume, and we can play around with the depth of field so we can see what 10 would look like compared to something like 80 or 50, and you can start getting an idea of what you might want this to look like when you're a little bit closer to the character and how this can kind of affect your overall result. So this is a nice way to test things as well. You can get an idea of what it would look like in-game by pressing play and playing around with the post-processing volume here. So then you've got other things as well, like the film, different color gradings, which again, I definitely wouldn't be able to do any justice. I'm going to leave these, but you can add different saturation, different colors to your shadows and different color balances and things to kind of set the mood in certain scenes. Updating the reflections more for the lumen or global illumination side of things. Another one which can really make a difference. I don't think this takes full effect in Unreal Engine 5 because of the lumen, but in Unreal Engine 4 you can get some good results with the ambient occlusion, adding some extra shadow detail around the darker crevices that you'd see down here. You can see it doesn't take any effect here, but it's worth trying if you're in Unreal Engine 4. And then things like motion blur if you wanted to add that as well. But I think for the most part, these will just be like a few small changes that I'd make. The more that I've changed, the more that I've noticed the vignette's gone away. So I might go back to the image effects and just increase the vignette a little bit. We can press F8 again and see what this is like to control. So we've just got a little bit more noise, maybe too much noise in the grain jitter. So we could perhaps turn this down and turn the size down a bit so we get things looking a little bit grainy, but not too much. And we get some kind of interesting results here. So it just immediately makes things look a bit smoother without really doing anything to the actual assets. And everything just looks a little bit more kind of not realistic, but believable in that they're not just perfectly clean slates of color kind of populating the world. So of course, all of that was done during runtime, which means you will need to remember what you were changing and just come back in and make those very slight changes. So I think I changed some of the image effects. If you wanted to, when you're in runtime, you can always come in and copy the values that you want to store. Just remember which ones are most important and copy those across. But again, that is quite a nice way to just test what it looks like in gameplay. I think the other one I added was a little bit of depth of field, wasn't it? So you can make changes like this and then add those to your final project just to get things looking like it's had a little bit more attention given to it. Hopefully you've enjoyed that content. And as always, I just wanted to say a big thank you to all of the people supporting all of the work that I do here on YouTube, allowing me to keep making this weekly content. So a big thank you to all of the names scrolling down the screen.